All right, let's move on to The Royal Tenenbaums, which came out in 2001. And this is the film where Wes really hits his stride in terms of his bold style of filmmaking. It's an Oscar-nominated script that he shared with Owen Wilson. The film can actually get kind of dark at times, and like we talked about earlier, it plays out like a book. And the film is about Royal Tenenbaum, played by Gene Hackman, and his wife, Ethelene, played by Angelica Houston, had 3 children, and then they separated. All 3 of the children are extraordinary, prodigies, and geniuses. Virtually all memory of the brilliance of the young Tenenbaums was subsequently erased by 2 decades of betrayal, failure, and disaster. Most of this was generally considered by to be their father's fault. The Royal Tenenbaums is the story of the family's sudden, unexpected return one winter.
Yeah, like you said, I think this was Wes Anderson beginning to hit his stride, both with writing and filmmaking, where you see a lot of use of narration, of character description, and the quirky act structure of a Wes Anderson film that we're used to now.
In the beginning of the film, we learn all about the Tenenbaums. He goes kind of like character to character. He starts with their childhood too, and he does it in the most Wes Anderson way possible, narrated by Alec Baldwin. Wes developed a group of highly unique and eclectic characters, all struggling with similar issues, hiding from their pasts. A lot of trauma caused by their father too.
Yeah, it's really funny in the opening when we learn who the kids are, because all 3 of the kids were extremely successful prodigies. Chaz was a math genius, and he created his own successful business.
It's like a marketing whiz.
Yeah, and then Margot is a playwright, and she got like a grant to write plays for a living. And then Richie was a world-class tennis player as like a prepubescent kid.
However, now that they're adults, Chaz is hyper-neurotic about everything and aggressively overprotects his boys from the world he finds terrifying. Margot is highly depressed and a secretive chain smoker since the age of 12. And Richie is kind of at a loss of what path to take in his life. He's also become an addict. And the latter two also have to address their true feelings for one another.
This is the first film where Wes Anderson used his wardrobe to convey the uniqueness of his characters. And it's so funny because when the 3 kids are children, they dress the same as when they're adults.
Exactly
it's
the same.
Exact same outfits. And so he found that this is the first time he found like to have strong wardrobe choices for his characters will really make them memorable.
Yeah, and obviously with Richie, his wardrobe changes because his character goes through an immense transformation throughout the film.
Yeah.
Obviously, spoilers, guys, if you haven't seen this movie, where there's a scene where Richie, later on in the film, attempts suicide. And throughout the whole film, Richie is wearing sunglasses. He has this long hair and this long beard because he was on like a boat trip that lasted like 5 years exploring the world.
Yeah.
Because he still is lost of what to do with his life. He doesn't know what to do, so he just decided to see the world, and he didn't cut his hair or beard. But in the scene where he tries to kill himself, which is iconic scene in Wes Anderson lore, he cuts his beard, he cuts his hair off, and then he has this new look, and you finally get to see his face. And that's kind of like...
he stops wearing the sunglasses.
Stops wearing the sunglasses. It's the first time he takes his sunglasses off as Luke Wilson. And you finally see, oh, it's Luke Wilson's face. I didn't even barely recognize him throughout the rest of the film.
Yeah, he was hiding himself from the world. And then, so all of these three people, they were child prodigies, but then their adulthood is just marred by disappointment and a lack of potential. And for the most part, it's Royal's fault as a bad father. And then that he comes into play of when he learns that his ex-wife is going to remarry, he decides to fake an illness to try and get back in the good graces of his family.
Yeah, but what happens is he gets kicked out of the hotel he'd been living in for the last 20 years, and I think he runs out of money.
Yeah.
And so he's forced to go back home, and he spends pretty much the whole film playing victim in every scenario he has ruined, and tries to win over his family's loyalties for all the mistakes he has, but it still takes him the entire film to admit his mistakes and accept his mistakes and what he's done to his families.
Yeah, and what's really cool about this movie is they shot it all in New York City, but because Wes Anderson, like I said, he likes to create this heightened reality where it's not our reality, he purposely filmed in the city in a way where he never actually showed any landmarks, any discernible landmarks in New York. So, for example, they filmed on Ellis Island, but he purposely kept the Statue of Liberty out of the shot because he didn't want anyone to recognize it. So this film is in New York, but we don't even know what city it actually takes place in. And the way he films it is to avoid recognizing any landmarks. So it's an amazing way to show that this could be like a city and in a fantasy, in a story.
I think we have to talk about the odd incestual relationship, though, between Margot and Richie. It's got to be addressed a little bit because I know a lot of people think it's weird, but again, we have to remember, be clear that they're not blood relatives. They're related through adoption. So Margot was adopted as a kid into the family. So technically, it's not truly incest. It's a little weird because, they grew up together. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, it's based on a French film of actual siblings that have an incestual relationship. But again, they're not blood related. I love Ben Stiller in this movie as Chaz, and I think he has some of the funniest gags in the entire film, like where we were talking earlier where he's always wearing that red Adidas tracksuit, but then at Royal's funeral at the end of the movie, he wears a black Adidas tracksuit. And then when he's with his sons and they're all shaving their faces with him despite them being 8 and 10 years old, it's hysterical.
Ben Stiller, he thought that his character wore a red tracksuit because it made him and his kids more easy to spot in any kind of dangerous situation. It would be like, oh, there's a giant red tracksuit right there. Or if he's like his kids got lost. But Wes Anderson said, I just imagined you in a tracksuit the whole time, so there's nothing behind it.
And I mean, Gene Hackman's awesome as Royal. He's a very iconic character in Wes Anderson's world. Compared to the rest of the cast, it seems that every character besides Royal takes life too seriously, where Royal doesn't take life seriously enough.
And it's his own fault because since he never took his family seriously, he created these obsessive personalities within his children.
Yeah, and Gene Hackman and Wes Anderson actually did not get along throughout the filming of this movie, and Hackman signed on hoping that it would be a fun and relaxing film to do, but it ended up being more taxing of a role than he expected it to be, and it had been noted multiple times that they fought on set a lot, and Gene Hackman even bullied Anderson on set openly over disagreements of filming and sets and like runtime and everything, and leading to a lot of the female castmates like Gwyneth Paltrow to ignoring Hackman on set, and Bill Murray even verbally defending Wes on set and coming to his aid in response to Gene.
Yeah, I think because Gene Hackman, he's an old school actor, man, and he retired a couple of years after this film, and so I'm sure he didn't understand the exactness and the attention to detail that Wes has in his filmmaking, like we said, where everything needs to be timed perfectly with the cameras and the lights and the sets. And so I'm sure he was expecting an easy shoot to just chill and
like
hang
a
out.
fun comedy.
Yeah, but I don't think he understood the genius, but also the taxing physical production of a Wes Anderson film.
And again, this film, the similar theme we talked about earlier, where Wes has children acting like adults and adults acting like children. The 3 children, plus obviously Eli, played by Owen Wilson, who's the neighbor across the street, who also has the relationship and affair with Margot in their past. The 3 of them act like adults when they're kids, and they're highly successful prodigies. But then when they're adults, they're all acting like children, and it's ironic.
So this is Wes Anderson's first ensemble, which will become a common way of storytelling in the future for him, where it wasn't just one or two or three. It wasn't just one or two leads. It was a group of people leading the film with very distinct storylines, each of their own.
Yeah, and just one more thing to point out is this is a comedy, but again, there are dark moments in it, and it's emotional at times, especially the final scene between Chaz and Royal. This is the relationship that's been most damaged probably by Royal because he stole funds and money from Chaz as a kid, and Chaz is the person who sued Royal and got him disbarred from being a lawyer. So it's an emotional situation after the car crashes, and Royal comes over and brings Chaz a Dalmatian, and Chaz accepts the gift, and he says, I've had a rough year, and it really gets me choked up every time I hear it, because now Royal finally understands what he's done to his family, and he's finally connecting with his kids.
Yeah, he didn't even know the name of his wife before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, quick fun fact. Danny Glover, Luke Wilson, and Owen Wilson all turned down parts in Ocean's 11 to appear in this film.
Who would the Wilson brothers have played?
I bet it would have been Casey Affleck and Scott Caan's characters.
Maybe, yeah.
That's what I would guess, and they probably would have made them brothers.
Because they weren't that famous back then.
And Danny Glover would have been probably Bernie Mac's role.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's interesting. I love Casey Affleck and Scott Caan, though. They're great.
Yeah, they're hilarious.